So, my friends, middle of week one, gave you some time, and now you're going to be getting some education stuff. And the reason I say middle of week one is the first thing I want you to get in your head that's a mindset thing that I think really plays a big role is how many days are in the week? 7. Yeah, you're so smart, right? So often people say like, oh yeah, I ate really well during the week, but not the weekend. But it's still a part of a week if we're looking at a week's time span. And so there's this mentality that a lot of people have that turns out to be where most end up overeating and finding themselves unable to lose weight is that the fact that there's a week and a weekend. And during the week, I do everything right, quotation marks, because there's no right or wrong really, but to eat within a certain parameter that's going to help me lose weight. But then on the weekends, I deserve, right? So this level of entitlement, this mentality that then I can just go off the rails and eat whatever I want, right? You absolutely can. It's just not going to help you reach the results that you're looking for. So today, Thursday, really the middle of the week is Thursday at 5 p.m. That is your entire week that is happening Monday through Friday. If you're starting Monday at 5 a.m., then the halfway point of the week is really Thursday at 5 p.m. We're barely getting through this thing. We're halfway, right? So I want you to make this conscious effort and shift and say, could I sprinkle different things in to help me be more sustainable so I don't have this start-stop, right? This absolute, this moderate, complete mentality instead, right? So probably the most important thing, though, that I want to cover today, after talking a little bit of mindset, is how you're going to be successful with this, right? Beyond that. So the people that are going to do really well, right, with this or with any type of weight loss are going to be the people that are in a calorie deficit. That is what is required to lose weight. So oftentimes people say, well, I lost weight on keto, right? Or I lost weight doing, I should write this bigger for you guys to see, but IF, intermittent fasting. I lost weight on insert diet here. You decide whatever one you want to put up here. So all of these work until they don't. They all work because of one main thing, and that's because you're in a calorie deficit. And that simply means that you're eating less, consuming less than you are actually burning, and so therefore you are losing weight. Your body's going to go, I'm not getting enough calories in based on what I'm exporting, so therefore our weight goes down. When we're in a surplus, our weight goes up. The challenge is a lot of us end up in a surplus for a really long time. Weight just keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up, right? And that's where your metabolism gets a little bit slower. So with that said, we don't need to do any of these things. We just do need to be in a calorie deficit. This is the phrase that I want you to remember. Calories are king, protein is queen, carbs and fats adjustable in between. So calories, right? They are the number one. They are the king. That's what matters most for us to lose weight. If we're in a calorie deficit, we're going to be good. How we create that is up to you. You can create a calorie deficit by doing intermittent fasting and skipping a few different meals. You can do it by cutting out all carbohydrates and doing a keto style and be in a calorie deficit and lose weight. You could do it by spiking your carbs completely, really high through the roof, right? And cutting your fats and your protein down. It doesn't matter. There's a Twinkie diet, right, where a guy ate 2 Twinkies, professional NFL football player, coach, and it's known as the Twinkie diet study. He ate 2 Twinkies every single day, right? They're 400 and something calories, and he did it for 42 days straight and lost a ton of weight. Extremely unhealthy probably, but it's still very possible. So calories are king. So if you're not losing weight, you're not in a calorie deficit. Well, how do we create a calorie deficit? 1, eating less, right? So 1, less food. That's going to be the number one thing. And that could be that you're going to track those calories so you know where you're coming in at. It could be that you're just using portions. Portion control is the age-old principle that always works, right? You can also do it by exercising more. So actual exercise, right? Now, that could mean that you're at the gym 6 days a week. It could mean you're doing that plus doing some extra cardio. There's lots of different ways to do that. Do you need to? Not necessarily. All these are not necessarily, right? How else can you do it? You can just move more in general, because here's this thing. I'm doing all this movement right now. That's burning calories. And so the more we move, the more calories we're actually burning, right? So there's the actual consumption of the calories, there's the actual exercise, and then there's what's called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Just throw that on there just so you have it. And that's all the other movements that are taking place in your every single day. So someone who is just sitting at a desk all day long is getting far less NEAT than someone like myself. If I'm doing like a full 12-hour day of coaching with you guys, yeah, I'm moving around constantly. I have no idea what my steps are, but they're probably through the roof. I'm picking a lot of stuff up as I'm going, right? So that level of NEAT for someone who's a construction worker versus someone who's a desk worker is going to be vastly different. So we want to take into consideration, how can I sustainably create all of these to the best of my abilities in a safe manner to get a calorie deficit? You could just eat less, next to nothing, do it that way, but I wouldn't recommend just doing that, right? So calories are king. So then let's go into the actual food part, right? Is protein is queen. Yeah, she sure is, right? She's got her nice little crown here with all the extra jewels. I have no idea how to draw a queen's hat. But the reality is protein is queen. And the reason I say that is we all know that the queen of the house drives the ship. She's the one that makes things happen, right? Like, that's why we have Caroline here, so she can be like, Joseph, stay on track, get your shit together, like, do the things we need to do, right? Everybody needs one. So with that, protein is queen because it is the building block of all muscle. It is the building block of every fiber within the body, right? And on top of that, it's the most thermogenic. So when we look at thermogenesis, it's the process of stuff heating up and then burning through a process. When you digest food, you're experiencing thermogenesis. That protein that you are eating, right, up to 30% of it is going to be broken down, if it's protein, through the digestive system. Whereas with carbs, it's usually 5 to 10%, sometimes for people that have really high functioning metabolisms because of the level of effort that they're having to do, elite athletes, stuff and such, then it can be up to 15% with more of your what's considered cleaner burning, so your sweet potatoes and things like that, right? And then your fats are 0 to 3%. And so that's where it's interesting that keto still does work, because you're in a calorie deficit. So you're still applying the rules of energy balance no matter what. And so when we're looking at this, what we want to try and do while in a calorie cut, in a deficit, is to make sure that we protect our queen. We make sure that we are getting enough protein within our system, because we know up to 30% of it is still going to be burned up, broken down, shot out just through the digestive phase. But it's going to do a few different things. One, it's going to really help us preserve muscle. The reason that we do body fat in this challenge as well as weight is because I don't want anybody to do anything really foolish like juice cleanses. Yes, they are foolish. I will outright say that. Or any of those tactics that are going to cause you to lose what is so precious, which is your muscle mass. It is really hard to build muscle. It takes time, a lot of time. I am a very lean dude, right? I don't have the genetic component to build muscle fast, which is why it's really hard for women typically to get jacked by lifting heavy weights. No, just get leaner and more sculpted is what usually happens, right? Unless you have some freak genetics. So we want to be able to preserve as much muscle mass as possible, because the last thing you want to do is lose it. It's so hard to build back up. Protein is going to help us do that, right? Second thing, obviously, we talked about, it's 30% thermogenic, which is amazing. So we know that it's burning while it's going. And then it's keeping our metabolism fueled. And then the third thing is that it's the most satiating, right? So that satiety, basically your fullness, is going to stay up from having protein. You're going to feel full by having protein in your system far more than something like carbs or something like fat. You're going to be hungry faster with those in your system. So that's why our protein is our queen. And then the last thing is carbs and fats, adjustable in between. So here's what's nice, right? We could go carbs on, not carbo, carbs, right, on this side of the scale, and we could have fats down low on this side of the scale, okay? So you're creating your calorie deficit by having your fats low and having your carbs moderate, as long as it's still within a deficit. So you could do it that way. You could also flip these if you wanted to. You could also have both of them lower a little bit, as long as, again, it's still creating a calorie deficit. So I don't want you to ever demonize any food group, any macronutrient, because they're all helpful. They're all good for the body. Protein and fats are essential. Your body, you can't live without having them in your system for a period of time, right? Carbs can be almost completely eliminated, but your proteins actually, when you get enough of them and you don't get enough carbs, actually act as carbohydrates, but it is dangerous, I feel, for most people to become carbohydrate sensitive by removing all of them, and then your gym performance goes way down. You don't see any professional athletes, none, who are doing keto or Atkins, because they need carbs to be able to fuel their performance. So that's why for most people, keeping the protein at a moderate level and finding an adjustment that fits based on what you like and what you can sustain is going to work, and then putting yourself into a calorie deficit. So that brings me to, well, how do I know where this all is, Joseph? It's a great question. There's a few different ways to do it. We're going to do the simplest one first, right? The first one is going to be portions. If we're looking at portions, we can do this very simply with this hand. Fits you. It's not like you're Shaquille O'Neal. If you were, your hand would be bigger. So don't tell me, oh, but I have really small hands. Well, for most people who say they have really small hands, what they actually mean is they have small, short fingers. Your palm is what we're looking towards that is going to be fitting for this. So here's how I want you to do it. Breaking it down into 5 meals a day, right? We're going to create a fairly decent calorie deficit. For a more advanced calorie deficit, you go 4 meals. For a really hard cut, which I'd be really mindful to be aware of, you're going to get some big hunger and it may be too much, would be to go 3 meals a day with this method. But you're going to use your hand for everything. Protein, the size of your palm. The size of your palm, whatever that is. So for most people, that's usually between 3 and 6 ounces of a meat. That's usually about half of a cup of Greek yogurt. These are all good, healthy, lean proteins. And the reason I'm saying lean is because we want to look for proteins that don't have a ton of fats or carbs. Or if they do, we just want to be mindful enough to know that we don't need to add a lot more. Peanut butter is not a protein. Peanuts, nuts, almonds, they're not a protein. They are a fat because that is the primary macronutrient that are within them. That one supersedes the amount of protein that is within them. They have protein. They're beneficial. They're good. They're great. Omega-3s, there's a lot of good things that are happening in a lot of these different nuts and different elements, right? Not peanut butter, but ultimately what I'm saying is they are not a source to go scoop out like 4 tablespoons and be like, I got great protein. You really only got about 8 to 10 grams there, and you had like 500 calories, right? So what we want to be aware of is that we're trying to go with lean proteins. We're trying to go palm size with each of our meals, right? So with 5 meals, that's the nice thing. Each one of those is going to be about 15 to 20 grams of protein, and we're going to be meeting our body with where it's at, right? I'll talk about what those grams are in a second. So the second thing that you're going to want to try and get with each meal is a serving or 2 of fruits or vegetables. Now, I personally say try and get 4 to 5 servings of veggies minimum, 8 to 10 maximum, right? Not necessarily maximum, but that's usually what people's bodies can handle unless there's too much, before there's too much fiber. And then 1 to 2 servings of fruit. So it's the size of your fist, right? And that's where like, hey, a salad for lunch, you can get like 4 to 5 servings right there if you really wanted to, if you do salads the way that I do. But a couple servings at dinner. Maybe it's 1 serving of frozen spinach in a smoothie. There's plenty of different ways to do this. But that fiber that is coming from there and the vitamins and minerals that are coming from those are so valuable for your system to keep it running, to keep it processing. And they're also a great source of carbohydrates. Now, fruit, 2 servings a day is pretty awesome for most people. People get worried about the sugars. I'm willing to bet if you're doing this challenge, right? There may be some other things that we've been eating for a really long time and in higher quantities than we actually need that have more than we need from that aspect, so we're probably okay. So don't stress on it. Just another little tip, typically the darker your fruits and vegetables are, the more vitamins and nutrients that they have, right? And the lower on the glycemic index they are. Doesn't mean all at all, but overall, your dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, those types of things, your darker colored fruits, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, right? Pretty much all those berries, versus a banana or apple, it's going to be lower in the glycemic index, so it's just going to have less sugar, right? So it's typically less calories, less sugar. But again, it's not the end of the world. It really is not. Just eat it, right? Don't freak out about fruit, Okay? Have a banana every day if you really want to. I have no problem with that. So with that said, we've covered our protein, palm size. We've covered our fruits and veggies that we're really looking for. We're looking for those to emulsify our meals, to build them up, to keep us full, to keep it feel like we're not missing out on anything. And then with that, we want to have carbs with 3 of our main meals. Now, if you're only eating 3 meals, you want to have that. If you're having 5, you want to have it with 3 of your main ones, right? And this is just to help make sure we're creating a calorie deficit. And this is all serving sizes for women. Forgot to mention, forgive me. But men is double on all these. 2 palm sizes, right? 2 servings here. 2 handfuls cupped is what a man is going to get for those carbs with each meal. Women, just 1. So a cupped hand, leveled off, works really, really well. It's about a cup of rice, right? It's a piece of bread, but maybe not 2. This is what we're looking to find a balance with for most people, and it works extremely well. 3 meals to get that full serving is great. It's when we have 2 to 3 servings, like potato is great. Sweet potatoes, great. They're all fine to do. It's when we have more than that, then obviously we just end up in a calorie surplus. And then the last thing that we're going for is fats. Fats are thumb size, 3 a day. So here, that's why it'll say on the almond bag, 12 almonds is a serving size. How often do you eat them? You're like, they're healthy! And all of a sudden you've had 600 calories of almonds without even realizing it. So your oils that you cook in, you spray, right? We want to look for ways to reduce a lot of the fats because we don't honestly need as many as we usually think. A quarter of an avocado is probably great. I'm not, again, demonizing any of them because they're all valuable in every single way for the body. We're just trying to create moderation with each of them to maintain a calorie deficit that is sustainable for you to get results and not be starving all the time. So that brings me to then taking it a step further if you need to, which is calorie counting. So what you can do from there is use an app like MyFitnessPal. That's definitely the one that I personally like the most, and tracking all of your food for a little bit. This isn't something to get obsessive over, but it's something to bring awareness to and can be really helpful for you to know exactly where you're at with stuff. Where are my calories at? How much am I eating? Oh, I didn't realize my version of a cup was actually 2 cups. I didn't realize that my version of a serving size was actually 3 servings. Yikes. And this is how all of a sudden things like cheese, we realize, is not a condiment. It's not salt, pepper, and cheese that needs to go on everything. I mean, if you want to make it work and fit in your life, I'm all for it, but it's just going to spike the calories a lot. And so we just learn to be a little bit more aware with a program like, or a focus like that, by using something like MyFitnessPal to track your calories, right? And then if you really wanted to take it one more step further, right? Some people are data people, numbers people. What typically works for most people is to set their protein based on what you realize you're already eating between 0.8 and 1.2 grams per pound of goal weight that you have for yourself. So, for instance, if you weigh 200 pounds, let's say you weigh 220 and your goal weight is 200, then we're going to go off of that 200. So we're going to want to have anywhere between 100 and maybe 75 grams, and even as high as like 225. And that's going to be able to keep you full, maintain the muscle mass, and keep your body doing great. Now, if that seems astronomical from where you are already eating, or just prone to some digestive issues, start lower. Start from where you're at and shift up just a little bit, maybe 20 to 30 grams, and then maybe just a little bit more, right? And all the studies that people claimed that meat was bad for you and all these things, all of them to date have been disproven. There's nothing out there right now proving that meat is bad for you that I have seen. And if you know something, please let me know, because I love it. Like, research is ever changing. So everything is not, anything in absolutes you know you're in trouble with, right? Because we'll learn something 2 years from now from a new study. And I'll be like, cool. And we'll speak off of where we're at from now. And that's what we want to do, is keep evolving with all of this stuff. So nothing is in absolutes. Definitely nothing I'm even saying is in complete absolutes. It's just what we know as of right now, right? So with protein, that's where I would go. Then I would set my fats, right, to be 20. All right, battery pack died. We got to do the rest of this one a little ghetto on my phone, handheld. Not even going to set it up on the other tripod. But ultimately, I would set the rest of my fats to 20% of my remaining calories so that I don't have to worry about any kind of hormonal compromises. Now, if you like to have a lot of fat in your meals, like you're all about avocado, olive oil, the good stuff, I'm totally for it. Then in that case, I just said what I would do. I would put them higher. So maybe up to 30% of your remaining calories, right? And then from there, whatever is left are gonna be your carbohydrates. And that's where you're gonna go. Now, how do you figure out the calories? That's the last thing that we wanna do, right? So the easiest rule of thumb to put yourself in a light deficit, right? Light to moderate, depending on your body's response, because everybody's body responds differently, but is to multiply by 12. Whatever it is you weigh, multiply by 12, right? And that should give you a light, so a half a pound per week on average. Very average, very generalized. But you can also look at what MyFitnessPal uses. You can also use a couple calorie calculators, and you can always reach out, and I'm happy to help with that as well. And then if you're going for more advanced, I would go times 12 of your goal weight, or if you're really pushing kind of crazy, as long as you don't have any kind of hormone issues or any kind of concerns or running out of energy or waking up in the middle of the night hungry, I would probably go as low as times 10, right? So for instance, my weight right now is 159 calories. I would go by 12. There's no way. My basal metabolic rate is 1635, and that's what it just takes to be alive. I would not multiply that by 10, because then I'd be at 1590. So I'd be below what my body needs just to live throughout the day. So that wouldn't be healthy. So 12 is already going to be pushing it and making me work, making me hungry, but I would lean out even more, definitely, as I was going. Right? So those are just some tips, some things to be aware of. If you have questions, if you have concerns, right? If some of this doesn't make sense, if some of it raises some red flags, or you want some assistance, now just reach out.